Okay, so I've added the little braid of hair and I've pushed it behind her neck. So let's see what we have. So far, so good. Let's see, what else do we need? We need the necklace for sure. And when I was putting in the braid, I also noticed that her chin here, the little chin strap, I want this shape to go down underneath the chin strap. There we go, just like that. And now the necklace. This is going to be a lot of steps, but it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to take the ellipse tool and make just a slightly asymmetrical circle. I'm going to transform it and rotate a little bit, warp it just slightly. So it is like a handmade bead, right? The color of it, I'm going to use kind of a dark, not black, but darkish brown. I can steal it from what I have already. And then I am simply going to use the move tool. So I'm not even going to transform these. I'm just going to hit Command J and then move. Hit Command J and then move. Hit Command J and then move. And because I have auto select layer on, I can use the move tool to go back and I can use my arrow keys. And every once in a while I can hit Command T and I can grow it a little bit. Hit return, Command J, but I'm on the move tool and move. Command J, use the arrow keys, Command J, and move. Maybe Command T and rotate it a little bit, move it. Command J, then move it. So this is how you can do a lot of shape layers very quickly with the Command J function. Duplicate. Now it's incredibly important that these aren't just lines, because it's the complexity of those shapes that makes her neckline so interesting in the finished painting. See, that just really gives a sense of detail and focus to it, which is important. Command J and move. Whoops, wrong layer. And now as it goes back on her neck a little bit, they have to shrink slightly in perspective. But they also start to double up on each other a little bit. So it's a great way to get to know an artist's work, kind of simplify it into a shape composition. It does not mean you have the intellectual property to the work, because this is the very definition of what's called the derivative work. So whereas the cartoon jumble, you can do enough work to transform that into something original that you could sell on a t-shirt and not infringe on the rights of the original source material creators, like Arturo Herrera does with Disney. But with this, it's really clearly based on one artist's work. And so that is what's called a derivative. And no matter how artful you are about it, the value of the composition and the colors that you're using are based on someone else's work. And so you are not allowed to profit from it or claim it as your own. But we can use it as a school exercise and as a learning tool, and that's covered under the fair use for spontaneous educational purposes. We can copy others' work. But as soon as we start to sell it or pretend it's our own work, we run into some legal trouble. And Leonardo da Vinci might come and kill my family. So really the only tools I've used in making this are the shape tools and the move tool. And you don't even need the move tool if you just use Command T. But if you don't want to waste the time, like I don't right now, to transform each one, I can just use the move tool to move them into place. Okay. So many beads. There she is. So I'm going to move my overlay layer back over the top of everything, on the top of all those beads, so I can turn it off and see what I've got. And then see what's not working. So there's one shape doesn't really work that well, and that's this one. So I'm using my move tool with auto select layer, so I can find that shape. And I want to move this down below. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I actually like it there rather than there. I'm not sure what's best, because I'm not going to get hung up in all of these details right now. Yeah, I think that's just kind of more pleasing. So I'm just going to make that decision. And then the only thing I think I need for the head, I don't think I need the eyes or the bottom of the nose or the lips. I think I need that little headband. So I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to show you how to submit this thing. So I'm going to use a thin rectangle, right? And then I'm going to transform it and warp it, kind of curve it around her head slightly, top and bottom. It's the delicacy of all these curves that really makes this composition work. Okay, almost there. All right, let's see how that looks. All right, and then I'm going to show you one little trick. Should you want to play with it. So I got to find the ermine. So here's the ermine. That's his head, that's his body. It's another part of his body. You notice how his body here is in shadow in the original. So what I can do is I can add a layer style, just like we did when we colored the cartoon jumble. I can add a layer style to a vector shape. So if I double click on it, I can actually add a gradient overlay. Woo! Weasel on fire. But I'm going to make it, a gentler gradient overlay, something like that. And then I can actually choose the colors to make it a little bit more gradual. And I can even warm up this color. And that kind of sets off his arm, right, in a nice way. Same thing with the neck. So this is a way you can add gradients and still keep them as vector shape layers. You're not required to do this, but you can do this. And it can make a big difference, especially in backgrounds. Just to add a slight gradient. Remember, you can play with the angle of the gradient. There we go, something like that, with the opacity of it. I'm going to do a little bit to the head as well. Where is that weasel's head? There it is. Let's change the angle slightly. There we go. And then I might actually do it to the blue sleeve as well. Nice gradient overlay. I can take the opacity down a bit on that. Up the scale. And I can just keep playing with this. I can do it so it multiplies, it makes it deeper, makes it more subtle. On and on. You can do it to her neckline. The important thing is you're not rasterizing it. There we go. And then you might just need to change the color of some of your other shapes. Like for that neck, I just need to keep that color now. It might just give a really subtle gradient to her face. And then maybe to her hand. So as long as you're dealing with subtlety, you can make this all work pretty well. Push that up to the layers. And then darken the wrist, just pick the color that's on the dark end. And for the fingers, same thing. Just pick the color that's on the end of the gradient that you want it to pick up. I made these hands out of lots of shapes, so lots of little selections. Okay, so now I need to start saving it. And so what we're going to do is save it as a JPEG. Same name. There we go, that looks good. All right, so I'm going to make this a little darker. No, not that dark. There. And make this a little darker. Okay. So that's as much as I can do right now within the time. So how do we save it? Command S saves it as our Photoshop file. We go to File, Save As, and we, to the desktop, save it then as a JPEG, JPEG. And that's what will go into PhotoBucket. We want to make sure it's